The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This Prime Minister has forced 7 million Canadians to cut back on their diet to a point where they are no longer healthy. This Prime Minister has forced Canadians to cut their budget for food, and therefore a record-smashing 2 million people are lined up at a food bank every month around corners in ways that we haven't seen since the Great Depression. That's the austerity he's imposed on Canadians. Now he wants to quadruple the carbon tax on the farmers who bring us our food. We have a common-sense Conservative Bill C234. Will the Prime Minister stop blocking this bill in the Senate, let it pass so that our farmers can produce food and our people can afford to eat it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if the Leader of the Opposition actually cared about Canadians being able to afford their food, they wouldn't have dragged their heels on the passage of C56 that is increasing competition in the grocery sector. But indeed, Mr. Speaker, there are a lot of factors that deliver higher food prices, not just for Canadians, for people around the world. And one of the key ones is Russia's continued illegal invasion of Ukraine, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we can affirm clearly that we will stand with Ukraine with everything necessary for as long as necessary. As we saw last week, no Conservative politician can say the same in this House.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Actually, we are the only party that has stood with Ukraine, Mr. Speaker, rather than trying to impose a carbon tax. But, you know, this Prime Minister, I understand what he's doing. He has imposed so much misery here at home, whether by doubling housing costs, forcing people into tent encampments, forcing 2 million people to go to a food bank. These are the problems here at home at the kitchen table. He is so desperate to talk about anything else that he avoids talking about what's happening in our own country. So will he answer the question? Will he take his tax off our farmers so our people can afford to eat?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition full well knows that 97% of fuel emissions in the agricultural sector, in the farming sector, are already exempt from our price on pollution. But he is so desperate to try and score partisan points that he actually refused to stand in support of something Volodymyr Zelensky asked us for in this House. How is the Leader of the Opposition explaining to Ukrainian Canadians right across the country that he no longer stands with Ukraine on things that they need right now to win this war against Russia?
À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Speaker, the Prime Minister continues to dodge the question about the tax he plans to quadruple on Canadian farmers. One farm alone in my riding is spending $150,000 a year on carbon taxes. And the Prime Minister wants to quadruple that number up to $600,000. That might put the farm out of business, which would mean we'd have to buy more foreign, expensive food from more polluting countries. And the Prime Minister is blocking a common-sense Conservative Bill C234 in the Senate that would take the tax off our farmers. Will he commit here and now to another carbon tax flip-flop to carve it out for our farmers so our people can afford to eat?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
There's only one party in this House that's flip-flopping, and it's the Conservatives with regards to their support for Ukraine. That's Mr. Right. Speaker, the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress has expressed its disappointment with the Conservatives for voting against the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. In fact, they're calling on the Conservatives to change their position, to vote for the bill, and to support Ukraine.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, it's hard to trust what the Leader of the Opposition says because he keeps changing his position. He says he supports Ukraine, but he didn't in his actions. He could demonstrate, direct his caucus to support this legislation and to support. support Ukraine.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, we're against the carbon tax deal that they put before the House, and we're against quadrupling the carbon tax on Canadian farmers. The Prime Minister can neither defend his position, nor does he have the courage to just admit, as he did on home heating oil, that he was wrong. He plans to quadruple the tax on our farmers who feed our people, which will send millions more people to the food bank. So will he rise today and show the courage to admit he was wrong and back Conservative Bill C234 to take the tax off our farmers so that our people can afford to eat? Get up and answer.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, it's ironic to hear from the Leader of the official opposition about courage to admit he was wrong. In fact, on Thursday, when he was called out by the media for alleging falsely that there was a terrorist attack, instead of taking ownership like any Canadian would be expected to do, he blamed the media and he doubled down. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the opposition has a real challenge with taking responsibility for his actions and his decisions. And quite frankly, Canadians deserve better, and they deserve to know the truth behind his decisions and his actions. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
Farmers from across Canada are calling on Liberal-appointed senators to support a common-sense Conservative Bill 234, which would lower costs on farming and making food more affordable. But the Liberals' Prime Environment Minister has threatened to resign if there's any carbon tax carve-outs. That's amazing when you have a record-shattering 2 million Canadians relying on food banks. The Environment Minister's dedication to making life unaffordable is unwavering. But will his Prime Minister ask that his Environment Minister stop threatening so-called independent senators and allow the passage of 234 so Canadians can afford to feed themselves?
The Honourable Minister for Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I would like to read you an extract from a news article. Canadian senator flees home amid safety concerns following wanted poster incident. In a disturbing turn of events, Canadian Senator Bernadette Clement was reportedly forced to leave her home due to fears for her safety. The incident came after a provocative post akin to a wanted poster was shared online by the Conservative Party of Canada, Mr. Speaker. So who's bullying who in this House and in the Senate? Certainly not us. We're not telling senators how to vote. The Conservative Party is.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
Here's the facts that the Environment Minister refuses to recognize. An Alberta poultry farm paid $180,000 a year in carbon taxes just to heat and cool their barn. When the Prime Minister quadruples his carbon tax, they'll be paying $480,000 a year. That farmer said he can't afford those tax hikes. His options are to pass on those costs to consumers or just call it quits. Is that what this Environment Minister wants, is to bankrupt Canadian farmers and force Canadians to food banks just to save his job?
Yes.
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Here's what independent senators said about what the Conservative Party is doing in the House and in the Senate, Mr. Speaker. Senator Saint-Germain pled violently through his earpiece and stood before Senator Clement as we sat at our desk, yelling and berating us for proposing this routine motion. She said the Conservative senator pointed fingers at another ISG members and suggested he would block work doing on the Senate's Human Resources Committee. And no matter how much the Conservative Party would like us to believe that this is about taxation, it is not. It's about bullying, Mr. Speaker. That's what it is.
Once again, I'd like to call on all members to please refrain from speaking when it's not your turn. That way, all members can hear the question and the answer. The Honourable Member for Louis